achieved by the year 2015 in the hope that over the intervening 15 years between 2000 and 2015 it would be possible to develop the policies and to find the resources to put the goals in place. So what were the goals? Number one, to cut the most extreme forms of poverty and hunger in half by 2015. And on the continent of Africa, we're not going to make it. On the continent of Africa, more people are becoming hungry and more people are impoverished. There was, interestingly enough, a World Bank benchmark to define poverty. And the benchmark was people living below $1 a day, if you can believe it. And then just a few weeks ago, the World Bank published a new report where they said the benchmark for poverty should be people who live below $1.25 a day. And when they measured it on the basis of $1 a day, there were 900 million people in the world living below the poverty line. And when they measured it at $1.25 a day, there were 1.4 billion people in the world living below the poverty line. And then the World Bank indicated that in the last few months there have been an additional 100 million people added, mostly women and children, because of the soaring food prices which no one can afford. So you've got nearly a quarter of the people in the world living on less than $1.25 a day. You've got half the people in the world, virtually over 3 billion, who are living on less than $2 a day. Try to imagine it. And then I pick up the Globe and Mail this morning, the newspaper, and I read on the front page of the business section that the African countries are going to be hit severely by the international financial crisis. It was originally thought that Africa could somehow evade the crisis, but now suddenly the banks and the financial institutions and the people of Africa are going to feel the full impact of the financial crisis as never before. So the modest gains that have been made are now in danger of being lost yet again. And then I picked up the United Nations compendium yesterday of news stories on serious issues, and I read that it is now an absolute scientific consensus and agreement that the greatest impact of global warming and climate change will be felt in southern Africa, the countries which have the highest prevalence rates of HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. So the countries which are most vulnerable will most ferociously feel the impact of climate change, which means more drought, more hunger, more famine, and probably conflicts over water. So it's like some kind of conspiracy directed towards one continent. And it's really important that those of you who care deeply, as you do in this remarkable high school, that you continue to care and you continue to study and you continue to raise funds and you continue to learn about and raise consciousness about the realities which are being faced in Africa, because it's positively overwhelming. And then the second Millennium Development Goal was dramatically to reduce infant mortality rates. It's not widely recognized, but we still have almost 10 million children who die under the age of 5 every year. And they don't die of exotic diseases. They die of acute respiratory infections like pneumonia. They die of diarrhea. They die of dehydration. They die of diseases that we don't even talk about anymore because they're completely foreign to the Western world. And incredibly enough, in this year 2009, we still haven't been able to find a way to reduce the numbers of children who die in agony from those diseases. And the third Millennium Development Goal was to reduce maternal mortality rates. Believe it or not, I find it hard to believe, but I know it's true, more than 500,000 women die in childbirth every year. And we've never been able to reduce that number for almost 20 to 25 years. It repeats itself over and over again. We know everything there is to know about emergency obstetric intervention. We know about midwives. We know about birth attendants. We know how important it is to transport a woman who's in difficulty in labor in a rural area into an urban hinterland. and we've never been able to reduce the carnage. So naturally, reducing maternal mortality became a Millennium Development Goal. Number 4 was to put every single eligible child, eligible of primary school age, into primary school. And incredibly enough, there are still between 77 million and 100 million children, mostly girls, always girls, who are most discriminated against. These kids are not in primary school. And even the children who are in primary school can't afford the school books, can't afford the uniforms, can't afford the Parent-Teacher Association fees, can't afford the examination fees. Do you know why these kids can't get to school? Because they can't afford to pay the school fees. And it's such an indescribably sad and upsetting